Hello everybody and welcome back to the fourth episode of The Young Man on BallinCraig Estate. We pick up right after the last episode where the young man and Trevor discovered that somebody had been tampering with at least some of the silage bales here on the field that had been standing and the cows had fallen sick. The vet has been up and seen them, and it's important that over the next couple of days to keep a very close eye on the cattle. So Trevor is going to head up into the field. In the meantime, the young man has got to get all the existing feed scraped out from the yard and has phoned down, talking to the shop down in the village and the country store, and been able to source a couple of bags of cow feed. Pellet feed. Now these are really quite expensive, so it's a short-term measure, and speaking to Trevor, they both agree that it's really not safe to carry on feeding the cattle on any of the silage that's standing in this stack, although they've only found sleds in a couple of them. One up here, somebody has obviously deliberately contaminated their feed, so there's no way that they're gonna risk feeding any of the other ones. It is possible that somebody has managed to slip something in. The young man's really shaken. He can't figure out who would have done this, why, and why on earth it would happen on the very day that he actually finally made the decision to quit his job and stay on the farm at least for the full year. But right now, there's a much more important mission, and that is to get the contaminated feed out of the cattle pen and then try and get them something safe to eat as well. Obviously, one of the problems with all of this is also that after speaking to the vet, with contaminated cattle and medication, for the next couple of months they're not going to be able to sell any of the milk from the cattle, so there's going to be no income on the farm on top of a hefty vet's bill already. There's still going to be the normal running bills here on the farm, and suddenly the £6,000 that the young man started out with has disappeared. They managed to sell a little bit of milk, thankfully, before this happened. That was enough to cover the vet bills, but basically the young man is back down at £6,000, and this is before we've gotten to the point where we can actually confidently say that everything is clear of contamination. So it's going to be hard times on the farm, and this pellet feed is going to be really expensive on top of everything else. Now there isn't really anywhere particular we can dispose of this. The young man's simply going to tip it up against the wall here because we don't want it anywhere near the cattle, on the off chance that anybody graces on it. So the young man gets a shovel out to pick out the last bits of food from the troughs here, and once he's finished that, he's got to head down and get some feed for the cattle. Dumping the last of the contaminated feed, the young man doesn't rest for long. Simply parks up the tractor quickly. He's got to head down to the store and pick up some feed for the cattle while Trevor's up in the field keeping an eye on them, making sure that medicine is dosed correctly. As he's driving down, thoughts are shooting around his head about who on earth would do something like this. He's only just arrived not that long ago, a couple of weeks ago. He hasn't made any enemies, as far as he's aware, or as far as Trevor could tell. There hasn't been anybody who had any ill will against his uncle. Just as things were looking up for spring, things have taken a very nasty turn here on BallinCraig. As the young man has spoken to the guys at the country store and picked up the dry pellets, these are normally things that you would have really only mix into feed in order to enrich their diet. This is kind of high protein feed, but it's the only thing they have ready available. Given the time of year, nobody's really started cutting grass or having leftover silage, so they're gonna have to make do. It's another £2,000 for these sacks, which basically takes the young man's entire wealth before any extra bills down to £4,000. And there's bills coming in for water, for electricity, land tax and so forth. But right now, obviously the welfare of the cattle is of prime importance, because they're going to be the only real income source for the farm over this coming year. With the next 2 months wiped out in terms of sales, it's going to get very, very tight. The young man pulls up and wastes no time in getting the feed out. There's got to be something for these cattle to feed on when it comes down to it. And as the last sack goes in to the feed trough, it's a depressingly small amount of food, but at least it's high quality feed that will keep the cattle safe. The young man parks up the truck before he goes to find Trevor up in the field and discuss the situation a little closer. As the young man comes through, Trevor is looking after the cattle. The young man looks up to him. "That cost a lot of money," he says. "We can't keep going like this with no milk income. How are we going to make it through spring?" Trevor comes down a bit, still keeping an anxious eye on the cattle. "There's nothing for it," he says. "We're going to have to cut some grass early, although that might have an impact on us later on. It's really the only thing we can do." The young man looks at him. "Cut grass, but we don't have a cutter. Do we not need contractors in for that?" Trevor shakes his head. "Oh no, we have a pretty decent cutter. Oi, take it easy there. And it's up at one of the old sheds. Yeah, I'll scribble down," and Trevor draws on a piece of paper. "Just go up the road a bit and you'll find it up there. It's a bit of a faff because you got to get the header onto a separate trailer, and with just you getting this stuff started, it's going to take a bit of effort. But tell you what, I'm going to stay here with the cattle overnight, and you try and get some rest, and you got a hard day's work ahead of you tomorrow. I do have to go and mind my job, but I'll come and help you as soon as I can." The young man nods. "I don't know if I'm going to be able to get any sleep tonight," he says, "but at least I'll go over the numbers and look at our finances and try and get a few moments of sleep if I can. If you're sure, do you not need any help?" Trevor looks at him. "Look, lad, I've looked after these cattle a long time. I'll manage one night. I'll make sure they keep their medicine going, and you see what you can do around the place, but maybe you can even head up tonight and have a look at the cutter and get things prepared for the morning." "Yeah, okay," says the young man. And he doesn't waste any time before he heads up to have a look at this mysterious grass cutter that he wasn't even aware was belonging to the farm. But following Trevor's scribbled map, he heads off to see if he can find it. It's not long before he finds the location, and as he pulls in, he looks slightly bewildered at these old buildings that he didn't even know belonged to the farm. Wow. Well, it's like a whole other set of farm up here. He looks. a stack of fertilizer standing here. Oh man, he says. That'll come in really handy. We still got some work to do on fertilizing. Yeah. Let's look over at the old Massey cutter here. Doesn't remember seeing that from when his uncle was around, but he hops in and tries to start it up at least. Seems to work fine. Lifting the head up, he realizes he's going to have to think a little bit about how exactly he's going to get the machine out of this really tight yard. Feels very uncertain about having to handle this type of machinery. I really wish that Trevor would have been here with him, but there really isn't time right now, and on top of everything, although the grass has grown a fair bit, it's still going to be a pretty meager harvest they're going to get out of this, but it needs to be done. And with a little bit of finagling, the young man finally seems to get the header aligned onto the trailer and can pull the pins and reverse back the cutter itself so it's ready for the morning. And as the young man is heading back down towards the farm, it's a small victory, but at least he feels a little bit capable again. And he knows there's much hard work ahead of him, and he really still is thinking about the wisdom of his decision yesterday, where he told his boss that he was quitting his job and staying on the farm for the year. No job to come back to now. Over the night, the young man slaves away at numbers, spreadsheets, cost projections, and pretty much no matter what he tries right now, it's really not looking good. Eventually he drifts off on the sofa. He doesn't even make it to bed before the adrenaline and the intensity of the day's events finally takes over, and he manages to nod off for a while. After a long night of poor sleep for the young man, after he's pored over spreadsheets and looking at incomes and projections with no particularly positive outcome for the future of the farm right now, Trevor rouses him early in the morning to get up and get the grass cutter on the go. Trevor has to be at work, but he drives up and helps the young man navigate out of the tight lane and yard up at the farm. And just as he set the young man down the road to head down to the grass field, the phone rings. It's the solicitor, Felix Chalmers, from the company that so rather rudely visited our farm before. Oh, yes, Mr. Trevor. You seemed to fail to call in yesterday. We have absolutely no documented evidence of the young man actually residing on the farm. But I can assure you, we've had problems with the cattle, says Trevor. That be as it may, we really must insist on having evidence on every day, unless the young man simply wants to forfeit his inheritance. This can't be right, Trevor argues. He looks down the road. The young man's already on his way. He was tired and depressed this morning. This is really not the kind of news that's needed on today. Look, how about I get in touch with the vet, says Trevor. He can vouch. Oh. Mr. Chalmers on the other end sounds a little deflated. Well, I suppose evidence from an upstanding member of the community might go some way in delaying the inevitable. I really don't know why he insists on carrying on. He's clearly not suited for this farming life. Oh, there'll be more than you to decide that, says Trevor with an angry tone, and almost hangs up on him when he goes, I'll get the vet to phone you as soon as I can. And Trevor jumps into the car angrily. He's starting to run late for work. He's now got to get hold of the vet, vouch for the young man, and the young man is working away, hopefully up in the field, or has made his way there. Trevor's in two minds about whether he should even let the young man know about what's going on. You can just about see him up in the top field trying to navigate some of the tight gates and to get up and cut some grass. Trevor shakes his head and decides that there's been enough bad news for now, and he heads off to work and lets the young man get on with the grass work, and they'll cross the bridge of this pesky lawyer later on in the day. And that's where we're going to leave it for this episode of the young man's adventure on BallinCraig Estate. Thank you very much for watching from Overclock Gaming, and see you for the next episode soon.